Right. Here they are, your favorite or my favorite controllers of history. We're going back quite a bit with some of these. I mean, we have the Pong controller, the first official controller, where you literally had two knobs and you will literally move things around. The same here with two knobs.
Okay, boomers.
Yeah, look at that, knobs.
That is the first analogic controller.
Yeah, this is actually analog, before digital and before analog again. It's funny how we went.
Because I remember I had one of those in black and white. You could move the character up and down, and the quicker you were scrolling, the faster it was going.
Look at this knob here. This is actually a digital pad that had some sort of elevated thumbstick that made it feel like it was analog. But we're already in the 80s and 70s here.
How cheap is the Master System that is a bad copy of the Nintendo NES with the different cross?
Yeah, this...
How bad is it? Like,
they really went for a fucking copy.
Oh, there's one I know.
And what else is there? I don't know what this is.
Bandai? What's the Bandai one?
What is that, a phone?
It does look like a... It's a remote controller. The remote control... Damn, it is a phone. Like, look, there is a digital pad for numbers. But this is my favorite, guys.
In case you wanna call the police and ask for a better controller.
I'm gonna say it out loud. Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys two questions. We have looked at the old ones, and then we're gonna look at the newer, more modern ones, the ones we actually played with. Of course, there's this little guy. But before I do that, I want to ask you a couple of things. What your favorite controller in history or ever, or the ones that you want to.
Do we have only one?
Feel free to give honorable mentions to the ones that you loved or hated particularly. But I want you guys to make a distinction between the look, the cosmetic appeal, and the way it actually played. For example, I have loved the Nintendo 64 controller, the way it looked, and ironically, even the way the Sega Dreamcast looked. Actually, no, the Sega Dreamcast looked ugly, or at least that's what I think now. Maybe I liked it back then, but
it's
this
fancy
one
though.
was really comfortable, really nice to play. Dreamcast, I really liked it. I remember this is the first controller with triggers, with analog triggers. Whereas
then 64 was analog.
It had the trigger. It had the normal trigger, but not analog.
I was an analog. Okay.
Whereas it had the first analog stick, and it looked really cool, but it wasn't that comfortable to hold, because you had to continuously, well, not continuously, but you had to change the position of your hand, and it was weird because the weight of the controller would be a bit off. You know, you're like holding it, but you can tell that you don't have the whole thing in your hand. And that's what I didn't like about it. What do you guys think? Who wants to go first?
The only thing, so touching briefly on the N64, I think that controller is true that he has this peculiar, grip on the middle, but I remember that the back button was super useful for playing Super Mario 64. It's definitely a controller designed to play in-house games. So if you play Mario Kart, if you play Mario, you can manage the camera with those yellow buttons there. So it's a controller built and optimized just to run in-house games. I remember I played Mario, Turok, Diddy Kong Racing, and all of them pretty well with that controller. But then if you were trying to play a beat 'em up like Killer Instinct, those little buttons, they were pain, and it simply doesn't work. So it's still revolutionary. I think Nintendo, amongst every console, is the one that it did took the risk. That's why I have my ranking. It goes the best controller
to play or to look.
For me, to look for me is this one.
It's really fucking pretty, I have to say.
It's nice.
I have to say.
It's artsy. It's really interesting.
because it's versatile. You can take it off.
Yeah.
It has a lot of functional. It's the controller with the best functionalities ever, and with the best batteries ever. And it has functionality no controller has, because it has got 2 analog sticks, 2 crosses. You can play in 2 players depending on the game. It's wireless. It works like a remote, because it has like these little things. So it's literally everything, and it can be combined in a single controller. But it's not that comfy to play with. I have to say that in terms of design and features, is the number 1. If you ask me which one is the best controller ever released, is this one.
What?
And this is the Wii Pro controller, Wii U Pro
Really?
controller.
Okay, that's an
Yes.
unsuspected winner.
Yes, because this controller can last, I think, 100 hours. It never ran out of battery. It's a wireless controller. He has all the buttons you need. He has a perfect cross if you need to play a beat 'em up. He has 2 analog sticks. He has triggers. He has everything that you can do. A home button, everything. Every damn thing. So if you want to play a game without being concerned about batteries, this is a fucking best controller ever, and it's solid controller. It doesn't feel like it's made in China, not at all.
It's similar to the Wii controller, but it wasn't not wireless. It was wired, and it was very comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's probably like an evolution of that one.
The only cheap thing are the analog sticks, because there is a little bug that if you play for a lot, differently from the PS4, this one they have basically a resistance that put it back in place. And at some point after years, it can be disaligned.
Doesn't go to 0 anymore. Yeah.
It doesn't go to 0 exactly.
This happens with Switch 2. I've heard this is the only problem the Switch has at the moment.
Yeah, the Switch, basically one of the 2. If you keep disconnecting them, one of the 2 is gonna stop thinking that you plugged it somewhere.
Okay, well, that's well.
But
That was really interesting. That was really interesting take, and I did not expect the Wii U Pro controller. But you know what I don't really like about the look of it is that it feels almost too. It doesn't have any strong lines. It's almost too wavy. It's almost too it's almost too organic in its shape. It looks like
it's super light. It's like,
it's
imagine
very light.
that
It looks light. Yeah.
When they say, look at this, like look at your hands.
It's thin.
It's never like, for instance, the PS4, apart from those crappy analog stick covers that
even the triggers
1 year
of
or
PS4
2,
are terrible.
I don't like them. Yeah.
This one is solid. It's solid. It's like it's a controller for gamers that wants to play 8, 9, 10, 12 hours. With the PS4, I need to change the controller if I'm playing for 12 hours. With this one, you can play all the fucking day. You can enjoy your game without concerns. You can play fighting games with no issues. Your hand's never gonna hurt. Like this weekend, I was playing Last of Us for 8, 12 hours, and my hand were hurting at the end of the playthrough. So definitely is a winner. The PS4 is a good controller, not as good as the PS3. But the problem is the battery and the feature. Yes, that light bar nobody cares about. The touchpad is a very high cost feature that was never utilized. So to me, it's an experiment that didn't work. Whereas Nintendo did experiment where it worked. It would be good if consoles were releasing cheaper controller and more solid, less feature. I mean, we don't need a screen in the controller. Really. We don't need a touchpad in the controller. We just need 2 analog sticks, 4 solid buttons, 4 triggers. I don't even care about the analogic triggers, honestly, because you barely use them. You may use them to aim the same way on PS3 you were doing, but that's it. But touchpad and things, like, you don't really need this crap. You need long batteries. And we also need a wire. You need a long wire in the console. Like, you really need this shit.
Mick, what can you tell us? What's your favorite?
This question comes to a time of real pain because I just had to lose one of my favorites, not my favorite controller, and this is what became of it.
What happened?
It used to be an Xbox 360 controller which had a long, and it wasn't working anymore, and I opened it, but these things are really cheaply designed, and it's really plasticky, and once you open it, I suck at doing this stuff, but once I opened it, I couldn't just bring it back together, and then it died. But this thing stayed with me for a solid 10 years or something.
Oh.
And I changed it when my previous favorite controller died, which was a Logitech PC controller, which basically this was the era of PS2. So every controller that was on PC was basically a PS2 controller. And Logitech did this one, which was super, like, way more comfortable than the PS2 one. It was super, like, softy and efficient. And I played the whole Dark Souls 1 and 2 saga with it and died. And I had to buy a new controller. But that was the moment in which, for PC gaming, if you didn't have an original Xbox controller, you couldn't play anything, because every game was set up that it was basically impossible to figure it out. And so I joined the dark side, and this controller, I never really loved it, but it grew on me in 10 years. But it was always plasticky, the triggers weren't that good. For example, to play Dark Souls, where you use mostly the bumper button, it's always very lamey. But this is a story. These aren't my favorite controllers. These are my favorite controllers, and ranking them onto the weirdest one, we talked about this one, but it has to be the N64 controller. Like, I didn't, probably it is because I never had this when I was a kid. I had this very late in my 20s, and I was surprised on how beautiful it is. And yes, it is not that comfortable, but there is one saying that I say.
Stop typing, man. I can hear you too loud. Sorry.
Can you hear? But it's super sound.
No. I hear you like raining, like you're raining on the video. Anyway.
It's raining, man.
Anyway, sorry, Mick, you were saying?
Yeah, it's very beautiful. But there's one saying that I say about this controller, is that most controllers, you control them, this controller controls you. Like, don't fool yourself into thinking that you are really in charge when you use this thing, because you don't know what's gonna happen. But I played the whole Zelda Ocarina of Time with it, and it was just beautiful. I even was able to buy a Rumble Pack on Amazon, cheap and used. This thing, I think it's a joy, that one of the weird experiments that we'll never see again, because now every controller, it's similar, or it has a shitty function. But my favorite, number one controller of all time, since I was a kid, and I have the original one here, it's PS1 controller. This is the same one that I grew up with. It has, 20? There's some bite marks for my brother still. You can probably check him out.
Oh, it bit it.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, it's here. There's more here. Sorry. It's not that ruined, and it works amazingly. I tried it, but I used to boot up my PS1 which is still there, every year. Now I don't do it anymore, sadly. This is, I think it's the perfection. PS1 and PS2, it's my favorite controllers of all time. I have to play a game that doesn't require analogs. It completely, I have tiny hands, but it completely fits in my hands, and it's sturdy, and it's everything you need from a controller. And besides, even though it giggles a little bit, but this guy fell 4 years in a row. I think this guy's really looks to me very solid, while the Xbox One really lost me in 10 years super easily.
I have the story about the Sony controller. I loved the Sony controller when I first played it, PlayStation 1, but I think they have really improved it with the PlayStation 2 DualSense.
True, yes.
I think they
Yeah.
really improved the overall feel of the back button. The back button felt so much better
Yeah.
that when I moved to PS3, I actually didn't quite like it because the
Nope.
trigger of PS3 were slippery. They didn't have any sort of leverage that
Yeah.
you can use for using the fucking trigger. So I didn't really like it when I moved on to PS3. And during that generation of console, my favorite controller was definitely the Xbox 360 one. I have also played with the first Xbox, and I remember the Xbox One having a decent looking controller, but I thought it was really uncomfortable, and it had a terrible digital pad, and the terrible digital pad stayed with the Xbox 360 controller.
Yeah.
Which is a great controller
Yeah.
again, probably my favorite, but it had two problems. It was heavy, it was really heavy, especially if you had the one with the battery back in the back, and the digital pad was incredibly bad. I mean, we all know how bad the Xbox 360 controller is for the digital pad. But going back to my story with the PS1 controller, obviously love the PS1 controller, and I was one of the first people to purchase the analog controller before the DualShock.
Did you have like an illegal one, like one of
No,
those?
it was an official Sony analog controller, but not the DualShock. So Sony, for a very brief period of time, have released a version of the
you're
controller
right.
that was not the DualShock, that was analog, but that had no vibration. I think it was just called PlayStation 1 analog controller.
Is this a six
Yeah,
axis
because
all over
It
again?
was this
They
one.
released the. Yeah, I think I had it.
This
They
one.
released Monkey Escape, Ape Escape.
What?
Yeah, it was this one.
Yeah, I had it.
Oh my god.
And it,
Yeah.
But
so,
like this
so
one.
as you can see, the stick is very different from the DualShock, where it's bumpy.
It's yellow.
It's what the light is yellow, and the stick is not full, but it's empty. So there's a caveat inside, and there's basically feels empty in the middle of the thumbstick. And it's not a DualShock. It had no vibration.
No.
And it was just made for you to play with some games that supported. As you can see here, the thumbstick was empty, whereas the DualShock arrived
Yeah.
with full thumbstick, which in my opinion
Oh my
were
God.
actually worse. Like the empty thumbstick were
Probably,
really
yeah.
good in my opinion. But
Don't we have empty thumbstick now on PS4?
yes, now PS4 went back to a more flat design.
Also, like select and analog are by far the comfortablest
yeah, the most comfortable.
keys ever to put here, and also it just made sense that this thing was called select. Why now we gotta call it back option?
I don't get it why
No.
they called it option. They were trying to clarify select, but they made it worse. Because now option
Yeah.
is not used for options. Because
Nope.
they use start for option and they use options
Yep.
for pause. Which
Leave it as select.
Seriously.
I always liked select.
Seriously, what the hell? But you guys remember when PlayStation 3 tried to change the controllers? Do you guys remember this?
The banana one, yeah.
No, I don't remember. What's
They
that?
announced it. It was an actual controller. It was the controller of the PlayStation 3.
Yeah,
And
it was a
yeah,
prototype.
it-
Yep.
3 years, written 3.
No, this is
It looks like a Batarang.
no. This is
Yeah.
this is a PlayStation 3 controller. This is the
Yeah.
actual
Oh.
controller that came when PlayStation 3 was. You see the Platinum PlayStation 3 on the back? This is a PlayStation first form
Yep.
of the PlayStation 3. It's called PS3 6-axis or whatever controller it was called. And
Doesn't
this is
look bad.
apparently people.
I mean, the 6-axis then was out
you see,
for real.
people didn't quite like it because it looked a bit like a boomerang or a banana. And after the first reaction of the people, they canned it and they decided, you know what, this is going very bad, let's go back to the DualShock. And that's how the DualShock is still the PS3 controller and PS4 controller.
But
their
if you ask me
intention
now for a
was to change it.
PS5, it would work for a PS5.
Maybe.
Yeah, because look at the controller from the PS3 now. A PS5 would work with that look. It wouldn't work on a PS3, but on a PS5.
Can't we just go back to this?
I think we could go back to a normal PS2 controller. I would love a PS2 controller.
What's the
And also,
ball?
I want fake memory card. Can we have fake memory card on PS5?
Anyway, this is what has happened. And going back to the games, and going back, to the controllers, I think that, as I said, Nintendo 64 looked great, but felt weird. Sega Dreamcast looked weird, like some sort of Batman sign, but it played very nicely. And in
true.
more modern times, what I hate about controllers recently is just how cheap they feel. Like the ergonomy of the PlayStation 4 is really good. It is ergonomical and it is comfortable, but it's just strangely weak. You can feel that it's not solid enough for you to actually twist it. And when I click the controllers, when I click the triggers, sorry, it feels weird. It feels like I'm about to break it, and I can hear it squeaking. It goes like yeah, makes all these noises. And so that I felt completely out of love with the PS4 controller. Even though it looked good, and it looks good and feels good in your hand, there's something in terms of feeling when you play, the sensation of it. It's just strangely discomforting because it's almost a bit too light. You know, when something is too light, it's almost feel empty. Like this fucking thing of plastic feels empty. And that's what I don't like about the PS4 controller, which is probably still the best controller around at this point.
Probably, but I mean, how much are now designers making the controllers, and how much marketing is making the controllers? I think this thing needs to look pretty to sell more, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that I don't agree with it, honestly, because if I look at the controller, none of them looks pretty.
Looks weird, maybe weird sells more. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it's more about the aesthetic of the console. But nowadays, if you look at for instance, the Xbox, I think they invested a lot of money into the power of the console, but the marketing in terms of how it comes out, I think they saved a lot of money there. They made a cube or a rectangle, and that's it. Whereas I think marketing is not going to have an impact on console because there is already a lot of money involved. And if you ask me, on PS4, like Sony, marketing is not, in PS5 is not spending money because they are clearly messing up with the communication. But they should release cheaper controllers.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like more solid. Like this is this costs £25. And is the best controller ever. The PS4 costs £50 and is a crappy shit.
Yeah. No, by the way, when this Xbox thing broke, now I had to replace it, and these things are not, available anymore. Period. Mm-hmm. And I was able to buy a Xbox One to play on PC, and it's $50.
It's ridiculous.
That's way too much.
It's ridiculous, the business of controllers. Yeah. And one thing that I have to say, like, both on PS3 and on PS4, I had to buy a second controller because it broke. Now, I played a lot of my PS3, fair enough, but I did not play my PS4 at all. I have not played PS4 at all. I've played just a few games and it broke, and it didn't fall. My PS4 controller did not fall. Well, maybe a couple of times, but it broke literally in my hands just because of all the pressure that I was putting into. I guess I was stressed, but fuck it. It's not like I was playing Dark Souls. I was playing games such as Persona or Yakuza. Yeah, okay, Yakuza, you smashed the button quite a bit, but I played like a normal player and it broke in my hands. So yeah, it speaks for how cheap they're trying to go, and the margins on these controllers are incredible, because when you try and buy a new one, it's £40 to £50, and it's way too much for a piece of plastic.
And it was also pretty hard to find on Amazon a new controller. As if you're on PC and if you want to play on a controller, which you do for a couple of games, not more than that, it's a pain. It's honestly a pain. And if you'll buy one of the cheap ones, it's gonna be very bad, and it's probably not even gonna work properly. So at that point,
anyway, guys, I think that we can wrap this up for this episode and for this special segment about controllers. Unless you guys have any honorable mention that you want to talk about, I'm gonna say one, which is probably the fact that the Wii U controller is actually okay. I'm just gonna say this like that. It's the Wii.
I have
The
it there.
Wii U controller is okay. That's the message to the nation that I have. The Wii U controller, I played a lot of it, and you know what? Considering how big it is, it's strangely comfortable. If you are in a comfortable position, because if you have to actively hold it, no, it's heavy at some point. But generally speaking, the Wii U gamepad, it's not too bad, and I'd like to mention it because it tried to do something strange and new. Do you guys have any honorable mentions?
Well, for me, definitely the Nintendo NES is the first real controller.
I would agree.
That was the game changer for all the console. Like, look at it. And no, that's Super NES.
There you go.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Damn.
It is actually beautiful.
And I broke mine, smashing it on the. I was smashing it on the floor, and I remember that one of the buttons it came out, but it was such a solid controller, such a solid wire. The only thing I think was start and select were a bit fragile, so you could mess them up.
Soft rubber, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, but the controller itself, I think I played it for 4 years and smashing it and still at it. They were giving 2 of them. It's definitely one of the best. I regret so much that now if you buy the Nintendo Mini that I bought, you only get 1 of them.
Bullshit.
Whereas on Super NES you get 2. Yeah,
terrible.
It's bullshit. But the games that are inside, I don't think you can play any game in 2 players.
I don't know.
I think that goes against the spirit of the original console. But anyway, that's a discussion for another time. Mick, do you have any other special ones you want to mention?
Very weird special mention. A PSP as a PS3 controller. PSP were comfortable and when used as controllers.
Really?
Yeah, you could even use them on very specific games, like a couple of games. You could even use one as a second monitor. There was like Formula Uno, I think, did it. You use like a rear mirror or something.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Also, let's not.
I think that was a good feature.
Yeah. Also, a very unsung feature is the fact that you could play your PS3 game on your PSP. You could actually just stream them from your PS3.
Yep.
That's
amazing.
That's actually pretty cool.
Stadia.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Very, very, very much so. Anyway, guys, that wraps up our second segment of this show, of this episode, and this segment. This was an interesting segment about our favorite controllers. We're gonna do more of these in the future, but for now, I'm gonna let you guys wrap it up. We're gonna just let people know where they can find us, and I let you guys talk about a little bit about your online spaces and where people can find you. Who goes first?
Oh, thank you. You can find me on TV/HeadacheMik, MIK, right? Yeah. You can find me there every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday at very uncertain for you Italian times, if you are not Italian. And I'm gonna be there playing soon Resident Evil 3 as soon as it comes out, and other stuff. Pew pew.
Yeah, cool. And Prosil.
Okay, you find me at twitch.tv/Prosil. You play too much. The purpose of the channel is playing games that are very difficult. When possible, I had some custom difficulty. For instance, lately I'm playing Last of Us in Grounded, which is a super difficult difficulty.
Yeah.
It's a super difficult mode. It's super hard mode because you die very easily. I'm adding some difficulty, changing it to pandemic difficulty, which in these days can be very popular. I'm not using guns, so I'm finishing the game in the hardest difficulty without guns.
Jesus, that's mental. That's
Yes.
my definition.
That's Prosil.
That's Prosil level of difficulty.
It took me 5 hours to do the part that you are just showing there, so that's why it's called pandemic.
Damn.
it's literally it's tough. I have to say that yesterday.
Hardest difficulty, so the extreme difficulty with no guns.
So there is difficulties. I think it's easy, normal, art, and then there is realistic, and then there is grounded, which they introduce now.
Okay.
After grounded, there is this pandemic difficulty where you just don't use guns.
Damn.
I use the bow.
Oof.
But not with humans.
Right. Wow. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty strong stuff. And for when it comes to me, you guys can find me anywhere on twitch.tv, on Facebook, on Twitter as Game Too Late. But most importantly, you can find this Talk Too Late podcast, this episode in podcast form on Apple Podcast, on your Mac, on your iPhone, and your Hydroid, and also on podcasts. And I mentioned on Spotify. I mentioned the iDroid because I just want to tease the fact that soon enough, guys, we're gonna have to make a special spoiler cast about Metal Gear Solid 5, which I think I'm very close to the end of. I don't know yet, but I think I'm approaching the ending part of it, and it's gonna be interesting, and I'm gonna leave you guys with that tease. And in doing that, I also thank you very much for your time, guys, and thanks to anyone who's watching and listening. Please reach out, leave a comment, leave a like, and keep supporting us, because this only gets better over time. And thank you, guys. And
like cheese.
Exactly like cheese and wine, and just like pandemics as well. It gets better with time, hopefully. So stay safe, guys.
Hopefully
it gets better.
Bye. Stay safe.
Care,
stay safe. Jesus.
Yeah. Theo.